Right, I did mention that RMB and the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry today released their Business Confidence Index. And joining me for that conversation is Alan Mukoki, the CEO of SACCI, and also Ettienne le Roux, the Chief Economist at RMB. Alan, just starting with you, you came out with the May Business Confidence Index, really up 26.9 points up from a year ago. Of course, we do know that we're deep in the hard lockdown, but you are saying that it's the highest level recorded since March 2018. And I just want to know what has helped to improve the business climate, especially considering this impressive report.
Well, I think that we've been down for a while. Good afternoon to you and your listeners. We've been down for a very long time, and what the data seems to be showing us at this point in time is that at least there is a level of confidence that seems to be returning, of course, because we're coming off a very low base. Last year was just a very devastating period for South African business, and it really sapped the energy and the confidence out of people's psyches. But where we are now is that people are beginning to see some green shoots somewhere, and I think that largely fueled by the promise of what the vaccine could do for us. The international business environment is also getting slightly better. So I think that there is hope for our exports, and because the world itself is opening up, and there's been massive vaccinations in many of the major destinations where we trade and export goods to. So I think that that's mostly driven largely by that, and maybe a level of stability around what's happening in South Africa itself, around a lot of the movement that you see. But we're still far off in respect to the things that need to be done so that we can have a period of sustained growth or confidence levels.
And just moving on to you, Ettienne, thank you very much for joining us, of course, with the RMB Business Confidence Index, also coming out with an outcome that you have not seen in years. What has been the biggest driver for this move?
Yes, thank you for having me on the show. And I think Alan has put it quite nicely. Our survey results are showing similar tendencies. Confidence up quite sharply to a level of 50. We haven't seen this for years. And obviously, that is a very pleasant outcome. It is certainly welcome news. What is interesting here is that confidence improved across all the sectors that we survey, and we survey 5 sectors. So it's manufacturing, wholesalers, retailers, new vehicle dealers, and the building sector. And confidence improved across the board. So it gives you an idea that it's not only the headline index that's going up, but it is actually relatively broadly based. Those 5 sectors cover about 40 to 45% of GDP. Also quite striking is the fact that in the second quarter, confidence in many of these sectors increased by strong double digits. So we have also 3 of the sectors with sentiment or confidence levels well above 50, in other words, in net positive terrain. I think, to make a long story short, this improvement in sentiment squares very nicely with the economy that is in a strong recovery. It's gaining strength, obviously from a low base last year, but nonetheless a situation where growth this year might well surprise us with its strength.
And I mean, with the strong performance, can South African President Cyril Ramaphosa celebrate that he's partly responsible for this positive outlook?
Please,
well, I think he can partly, but I don't think that we've seen much stability in respect of the politics in South Africa. The ruling party, of which he is the head, is still caught up in too much of internal conflict at this point in time. And in fact, it's been negative for South Africa, in all fairness. So the leader himself as a person seems to be showing signs of a high level of credibility, at least relating to some of the decisions that have been taken. He's come out very strongly, at least on the right side, in respect of the issues relating to the Secretary General of the ANC. We've read his responding affidavit in respect of the court process, which is normal because we're in a democracy. People should rely on the court, and that's a very good thing. It's not a bad thing that you see political parties going to court. It actually affirms the institutional framework that underpins our democracy, our constitutional democracy, that it is working, that a ruling party itself would choose to take its disputes to the court. But the point that I'm making is that the fact that he's responded in the manner in which he has it shows that he himself is very serious. And we saw what happened with the health minister yesterday. So from a personal credibility point of view, it does look like there is a leader. But from a reality point of view, where the ruling party is run in a way that is very different via conference, via the NEC, we see a level of instability ahead. So I wouldn't really think that there is a reliance too much on what he has done, but his own personal charisma and credibility has definitely come through very nicely. But I think that business itself, in respect of doing the things that needed to be done, the reconstruction and recovery plan is beginning to have a level of effect, because I think that it's united people around one common purpose, that we have no other choice, but we need to work together to move South Africa forward. And I think that there's been a level of stability and more of compromise and more of cooperation at the NADLEC level, where we as business, big government and big labor, we meet, that we all understand the challenges in a similar way for the first time in a very, very long time.
Ettienne, your input on this, is this a signal that your respondents are positive in terms of the structural reforms that we have been talking about?
Well, I think now you're putting your finger on exactly the thing that matters. I don't think we can say that the government has achieved significant success with economic reform, at least not yet. And that's certainly one thing that is required. If we want to make the cyclical economic recovery, if we want to turn that into a full-blown business cycle upswing, we certainly need to see much more on the reform front. We need to see the government speed up its infrastructure drive, and we certainly need to see the government implementing overdue business-friendly policy. That is when you can get growth to be sustained well into the future. We haven't seen, as I suggested, we haven't seen much on the reform front as yet, which suggests to me that the improvement in confidence that we are seeing now is more economic than economic reform related, and for good reason. The economy is open, companies are making money again, they're rehiring people, wages are being paid, revenues are up, profits are up, and so on and so forth. So companies have reason to be a little bit more upbeat. Obviously, not all of them. You know, if you would run a survey amongst companies in the tourism and hospitality sector, you will certainly get a very different result. Respondents there will certainly be more downbeat. But in all, in terms of what we can see from the survey results, sentiment has certainly improved. There's a better mood amongst those that we survey.
So I've actually noticed something quite interesting with the two business confidence indexes. So with RMB, I see that retail confidence bounced back strongly to 54. And Alan, you cite on the SACCI Business Confidence Index that it's worrying, constrained retail sales are worrying. And I just want to start with you, Ettienne. Considering what we saw with the GDP data yesterday, really retail sales coming in strong, I just want to know what is driving that confidence and what you see with the consumer condition going forward. And with you, Alan, I want to know what are these worries that your correspondents have come out with, and also what is their outlook on the consumer condition going forward, starting with you, Ettienne.
Sure, and if you kind of focus on the GDP release yesterday, as we all know, that the economy grew by 4.5% at an annualized rate in Q1. Now, 60 to 65% of that growth that we saw in the first quarter came from increased consumer spending. And if you drill a little bit deeper, you'll see that it's predominantly spending on durable and semi-durable goods that have done very well. Now, what is interesting is that those developments in the first quarter seemingly has been carried over into the second quarter, because what we see from our results is exactly a continuation of those developments. And that was in particular a reason why confidence amongst retailers increased quite sharply in the second quarter. And you then ask, what is behind this? What we are certainly seeing is that high-income consumers, those that have able to keep their job, those that have been able to save, build their financial reserves, those that are certainly starting to take advantage of record low interest rates, is driving spending on expensive items, durable and semi-durable goods. To a lesser extent, we are seeing less activity amongst retailers of non-durable goods, in other words, food and groceries. And that might well be a case of recipients of specific COVID-19 grants are losing out because those grants have lapsed. So that might well weigh on confidence amongst retailers of non-durable goods, while retailers of expensive items are doing much better.
And to you, Alan, on that worrying constrained real retail sales on your side?
Well, absolutely. I couldn't put it any better than what Ettienne has just said. So what worries us are the fundamentals. Number one, a lot of people have lost their jobs. This economy, one of the fundamental issues that needs to be really in the conversation urgently in South Africa is that we can't continue to measure economic success on the basis of how the stock market, how the gold price, how the exchange rate is doing relative to the big issues that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is talking about. And poverty, zero hunger, quality education, good health and well-being, gender equality, and all those pieces around clean and easy access to sanitation, water, energy, infrastructure, innovation, and all those particular things. Plus, what you want to create is a situation where you don't have short-termism and you're not measuring the economy on how well the rich are actually doing. South Africa, for it to resolve its big three gorillas of unemployment, of poverty, inequality, South Africa needs to move from being a developing to a developed economy. And in the last 100 years, we keep making this point, possibly only about 8 non-Western countries have actually managed to do that. And we count amongst those Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, old Hong Kong, Russia, Israel, and Australia. And if you look at what they have been able to do, it's the measurement around the Human Development Index. It's these things that the 17 things that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is talking about. When you do that, you are able to resolve these big issues in a way that is very permanent, and you can create a very sustainable program of growth like Lee Kuan Yew has been able to in Singapore and many others, Taiwan and places like that. So as long as we're not dealing with those particular specific issues, we'll continue in being in these boom and bust type cycles where we're measuring things that are themselves very important, but they're not actually critical for a state which is a developing state such as South Africa. We can measure inflation up until we're blue in the face of GDP. But where the rubber hits the tar, we have to be able to answer the question around the Human Development Index and therefore start building interventions that are sustainable, such as building competences and skills, such as increasing our product set in respect of what we make, manufacture, and export. We can't just be digging things out of the ground, whether it's plants or metals and minerals, exporting them without beneficiating them. So the worry, therefore, is when so many people are unemployed, and in particular, the issue of youth unemployment, it therefore means you're going to end up in that particular cycle where there are not enough people in the market to be buying the goods and the services to sustain the growth of the economy. So the few people who've got money, they start being under pressure because taxes will have to go up. They start to buy a lot of things that they themselves should not be paying for, such as security, infrastructure, fixing their own potholes, and all sorts of things, buying for their own medical care, where they already are doing that to a very large extent. So a lot of the people who are paying a lot of the high taxes are exactly the same people who are not getting a very direct benefit from the taxes that they're paying for. So what you want to invest that particular process so that when you pay taxes, you don't have to use your own disposable income to still pay for government services, where you should then be using that money to invest back into the economy and drive the retail sector. So those are the things that worry us at this point in time.